All right, I was waiting to see the last few faces I was expecting, and they're all here. So let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. I've got 5:01 on my clock, so not too bad. I think I'm probably just gonna skip with the pleasantries. If you're listening to this meeting, you probably know who all is here at this point because I've introduced us about 50 times for the last 10 weeks. So let's just get right into our agenda and go right into our return to learn piece. And Matt, I will turn it over to you.
All right, I like it, Sean. Good evening, everybody. Feels a little bit like early COVID here, doing the meeting from a basement tonight. So we had a district-wide internet issue hit us this afternoon to our campuses and in buildings. So we're without internet there, but we feel everybody's got it at home. So you're seeing us in some different spots potentially this evening or on phones. And so if you can't see some of us as well, we apologize for that. But we did want to spend some time talking to you guys tonight. We've had some pretty significant events happen over the last few days. One would be our transition to 100% option for families. And so we wanted to talk to you a little bit about that transition. You've seen district communications go out around that and to that effect about families being able to make that selection and that needs to be submitted by tomorrow for either February 15th or for the turn of the trimester. We have an update around vaccines, and we're excited to start those this week for our staff. And so we'll be talking to you some about that and what that process is going to look like and how we've worked collaboratively with our partners to ensure that takes off smoothly. We have some health and safety information we'll try to provide. I will let you guys know we didn't get through as many things as we thought we might with the administrative team this afternoon. Since we did lose internet connection, weren't able to finish our meetings, but we'll try to answer questions and provide some updates there. And a couple things I'll say here, maybe before we transition to some of those specific points and see what we can do to answer questions for you and provide some information would be, I would like to consider sending a letter to the state Department of Ed and to the governor, as you've seen come from some other districts, talking about the amount of vaccines that are still out there that we would like to express our interest in. Obviously, those being disseminated out to K-12 employees and ancillary employees just as soon as possible, that if there's any out there that yet to be distributed, that we would of course like to see those go to our staff and get those to staff as we ramp up for this 100% requirement. And then the other probably major update to have some conversation around tonight, maybe this is the point we can start with and then build off of, would be a request that came from the Iowa City Education Association, and I think our administrative team would wholeheartedly agree with, would be an additional work day for staff prior to this transition, where we would do a no student day. And so we'd like to propose that on February 12th, we would do a no student day, and that would actually turn to a staff work day. And then we would transition to 100% learning there on the 15th of February as mandated by the new law from the state. So those, a lot of things in my opening there, but maybe the first piece to build off of would be if there's any hesitancy or conversation from the board on our ability to do that staff work day on the 12th of February and then transition accordingly over to the 100% learning starting right away on the 15th. But we feel like to make sure service is aligned for students as we've rebuilt schedules and the need to continue to rebuild schedules to get our buildings equipped and fully to go, ready to go, we could really use that additional day there to have staff well prepared to start on the 15th.
So Sean, are you looking for a motion or just agreement?
I mean, I think we could probably just give some direction. I don't know that it necessarily requires a vote here.
Yeah, I don't think so either, Sean. I think I just wanted some general, if there's any opposition to that, then maybe we would want to move to some type of action. But I think as long as you guys were aware that that was what we were going to be proceeding with, I didn't want to just make an announcement without having talked to the full board about that.
Well, I would certainly support it.
Me too.
Yeah, and Matt, just to be clear, I think we have 7 built-in extra days to this.
Yes, thank you for that clarification, Lisa. So we start the year with we certify our calendar in hours, and for the 1080 hours, and we have almost the equivalent of 7.5 days above the required number of hours. And so we've used about half of those because of an early release for snow. And so we're still about 7 days over the threshold there. And so that would eat into one of those days. And then of course, any potential future true snow days, if we didn't do a virtual learning day, would impact that total too. But we're sitting in a good situation right now for our hours for sure.
I think it's the right approach. I know, you know, we talked about this yesterday, right, Matt, that, you know, one day might not be enough for some of our staff to really get the work done that they need. But we're also going to, you know, take another day, you know, out of the classroom for students, right? And so we're going to hear from that side. So I think it's sort of the middle ground, right? That helps both sides and get us better prepared to have success for our model moving forward. So I think it's the right approach there.
Right, and I think it speaks to some of the concern, obviously, from staff too. And it's not necessarily going to make it's not going to take that concern away fully, but it is going to give them time to prepare. I would say a lot of the pieces that are coming at them for that 100% requirement, to have a chance to think about their plans to deliver those services to students, and also make sure that they're well acquainted with any health and safety changes that we make, and make sure that the schedules flow smoothly. And so, like you said, Sean, we know it's a loss for instructional time for students, but we feel like that'll position us better to be more successful when we do start that piece on the 15th. So with that, I mean, maybe we transition to oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut that off.
I just want to say thank you. I mean, this teacher feedback forum and staff feedback forum, the two dominant considerations or requests were, please do everything you can as a community to help us get a vaccination and to get every Iowan a vaccination. And we just need time. We need time to work together and time to collaborate. People will be incredibly thankful and appreciative of that day. So I just want to, on behalf of ICA, and I would say up and down the line, this is administrators, nutrition services, custodians, physical plant, all of us just need time to do this really well as we welcome students back on the 15th. So thank you.
Thanks for that, Brady. So sorry, I didn't mean to rush to the next topic if there was other comments on that too, but thanks for that, no, Brady, I appreciate that. So I think our next thing then is the 100% transition. And like I said, you've seen the district communications go out around that about families being able to elect into that option, or they could delay that transition until the trimester. We know that has some impact on courses and teachers and schedule changes. I would just say this is a huge undertaking for the district to switch in this short window of time. This is in a typical year, just to kind of remind folks, we usually begin this process in January to build student schedules and staffing to have it set for August. And so we're in the boat here of needing to do a realignment of that in a period of days and weeks. And so I do think that our staff deserves a big piece of credit for making that happen, and for all of the idiosyncrasies that go along with that, and making sure that the service delivery model to our students stays at an extremely high level. And so I want to tip our hat to those folks and to all the people making that transition work, because it is a big undertaking for a lot of folks on multiple levels. You know, just like Brady kind of talked about, the different employee groups has an impact on all of them, you know, all the way from lunch schedules to special ed students having their services met. So thank you for that. The piece I'd want to maybe just talk about before I maybe ask Amy to talk some logistical pieces of the 100% component would be questions about why we're not continuing to do a hybrid model and why the district's not able to offer that. And so for us, when we looked at the two biggest factors are really space and staff. We don't have additional classroom space. We don't have a number of staff that we could separate into a hybrid environment and some into a 100% environment and continue to deliver on all of our programs and services. And so those are two big, probably the two biggest drivers. And this is a conversation we link all the way back to from this summer when we entertained different approaches we could do. And if we looked at different options for parents and we knew that we wanted to be as flexible as possible, but also had some constraints around those components, namely the staff and the ability to space our kids out effectively, or to have enough just general space to move sections and students around. And again, doing this in a short amount of time is also certainly a consideration, but I think some people have had questions around, if I wanted to send my student only a few days or 2 days or 2 or 3 days a week like they've been attending, why could we not continue to serve them? And I think that just speaks to we can't have a teacher operate 2 different cohorts of students either. They're going to have a 5-day-a-week class that comes to them every day, and we can't have another cohort of students only attending 2 or 3 days and operating on a different instructional model. And so that wouldn't be an effective solution or a high service delivery model in that sense either. So I think those are some of the biggest reasons when we looked at the hybrid piece, and I think it would be a false promise on that level to say that we could really create a hybrid experience that would be what they've come to expect through our hybrid model right now. So any questions on that I could try to answer, or any concerns you guys have heard, but I thought that was important to kind of recognize from the outset about why we're really into these 2 options that are left to us here after the passage of that new law. All right. Cool. Then Amy, if you don't mind kind of jumping in and talking a little bit about that transition to the 100% and maybe some of the academic protocols we'll look at for the transition and that transition procedure, and sharing information you think would be relevant to the board, please.
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually going to start with just picking up a little bit on the communication. And as Matt shared, we've sent 2 pieces of communication out to our families already. You've been privy to those, and we plan to send another reminder tomorrow. Just trying to make it real clear that, like Matt said, the hybrid is no longer going to be a viable option, but parents will have the choice to be online or on-site or vice versa. And really trying to hone in on the fact that this is one enrollment period, but really 2 options, 2 different date options, meaning parents could make that decision for their family on the 15th or wait until the 3rd trimester. The other thing that we're also trying to push is that families that are not making any sort of change this time do not need to go into Power School. And that is different because we've had such a strong push in August and then between 1st and 2nd trimester to get every family to go in and make a decision. But right now we just want that for those that are wanting some sort of a change. And I do have some data that I can share with you. And this data was as of last evening, so it doesn't have any data that we would have been collecting during the course of the day today. But at the elementary level, we see approximately 108 students coming on site, with 73 making that choice to come on site in February, and an additional 35 waiting till that trimester change. So far then, from on-site to online at the elementary, we have 27 total making that adjustment, with 26 in February and then just 1 in at the trimester. So in total there, you've seen about 135 students or parents wanting to make those changes for their students. If that would hold, if we don't, have additional information, which I'm sure we will, that's roughly a 61% of our students on site and 39% of our students in the online program as of 3rd try. And then as far as secondary, the numbers that we have so far would show that students wishing to go on site from the online program in February, we have 19 students making that election, and then another 31 in March. So that would be 50 additional students coming on site by 3rd try. And then from on-site to online, we actually have a total of 75 moving that way, with 43 doing that in March, and then an additional 32, in February, and then additional 32 in March. So that's approximately, or around 125 secondary students wanting to make a change. And then the percentages are just a little bit different there, with 59% of secondary students being on site and 41% in the online program by the start of 3rd try. So that's some data for you and a little bit about our communication process so far. As we've been working to update a variety of things, which we're going to continue to talk this evening, one of those pieces is the Return to Learn guide as well. And that guide is about 35 pages long. It's been sitting out on the website since the school year began, but we know that we've kind of combed through it as we're making this transition to, just really ask ourselves, what are those things that we should be considering? And one of those, of course, is the academic protocols for students in quarantine. So we're updating that. We recognize that there's language in there that references the hybrid model. So we're making sure it's reflective of the on-site model that we're about to move into. In the elementary table, we had already had a section about a class being quarantined, either the A group or the B group, but we hadn't built out that language for the secondary, and that's an addition that we're going to see this time as well. So with that, I'd entertain questions on anything that I've shared. All right, thank you.
All right, thanks, Amy. So another piece that we wanted to make sure to update you guys on was process and kind of progress around dissemination of vaccinations to staff. This is, as you've heard us say at several meetings before, we've been working directly with Johnson County Public Health to get that information, and we were anxiously awaiting what we could do. And so again, we've had a great team spending a tremendous amount of time to organize this effort in the most efficient way possible and to honestly acquire as many vaccines as possible in that amount of time as well. And so I'm going to have Chase kind of talk you through that process and what that's going to look like for us this week and how we've organized ourselves to be ready for that here moving forward.
Sure. Thank you, Matt. Good evening. As Matt mentioned, we are making progress on vaccination of staff. The state opened the Tier 1B this week, February 1st, which school staff are a part of. And so we've been working with the county over the last several weeks to put a plan in place to vaccinate our staff. And we're happy to share. We did so with our staff yesterday that we are going to have vaccine for some of our staff members beginning at the end of this week. With our large number of staff and the supply still severely limited in the state, we do not have enough vaccine for all of our staff, but we have put a plan in place. And working with the county, we are going to partner with UIHC to provide or facilitate the vaccine for our staff. We appreciate them being a great community partner and working through that process with that. It provides ease for our staff in knowing where they're going to be able to go to get the vaccine when it is their opportunity to do so. We have had to make some decisions in terms of grouping our employees so that we can work through the vaccination process as quickly as we get the vaccines. We talked a little bit last week that we looked at a lot of information, guidance from the CDC, guidance from the Iowa Department of Public Health, and guidance from Johnson County Public Health. We also pulled together a group of local health experts to get their input on what we looked at. And we shared these groups with our staff yesterday as well as we rolled out our plan. And tonight, I'm happy to share those with the board. And we really came down to looking at a couple different factors. And the first being to try to ensure that we get the vaccine to our employees that are on site most consistently right now. And then also coupling that with breaking it into age categories. When we talk to the local health doctors and other health experts in the area, they said, we really need to look at focusing on keeping our entire system moving forward. And so looking at people that are on site right now was a good place to start. And they also said that we should minimize the number of tiers, that we didn't want to overcomplicate it. And so that it was really better to have less tiers than more. And so we came up with 5 tiers for our employee groups. The first one being staff that are on site 50% of the time or more and 50 years or older. Tier 2 being employees that are between 40 and 49 years old and on site 50% of the time or more. Third tier being employees between 18 and 39 on site 50% of the time or more. The fourth tier being employees that are on site 25 to 49% of the time. And then the fifth tier being employees that are currently on site 0 to 25% of the time. And also that group includes our daily subs, our student teachers, our BASP individuals, our community coaches. And so it expands beyond what we consider our traditional contract staff. And so we ended up sending our survey to about 2,500 full and, as I kind of mentioned, part-time employees in the district. And right now, our response rate has been just under 2,000 individuals that have indicated their interest to get the vaccine through the school district this spring. I'll pause there and answer any questions that the board might have.
Chase, this is Charlie. Can you tell me where bus drivers fit into the priority list?
Thanks, Charlie. I forgot to mention them. We have included them as part of what we consider our contract staff. And so our bus drivers can fit into any of those tiers based on tiers 1 through 4 based on the criteria that I shared.
Okay, thanks.
And Chase, where are the locations going to be where folks can get the vaccine? Or I should say, is there more than one location, and where would they be?
Right now, JP, the location that the university has established is at Sycamore Mall, their East Side clinic. And we're working, and Kristen Peterson deserves a lot of credit for this. It's not a walk-in clinic. And so we've been working to schedule the times and the dates for all of the appointments with UIHC. And so every employee will get a specific email 2 or 3 days before his or her appointment, indicating the exact time to be at Sycamore for their appointment. And right now, we're looking at doing those just once a week. And obviously, we're hopeful that it's every week, but as I mentioned, with limited quantities of vaccine, we won't know until several days beforehand, how many vaccines have been allocated to the district on any given week for our staff. It is, it's obviously slow going. And I think that's been a theme that we've heard from Johnson County and from the state in terms of the vaccine rollout. But we also think this is fantastic news. And so we can't thank our community partners and the county and the state for prioritizing school staff as high as they did, especially as we just talked about returning to 5 days on site for students. We're very pleased that we're beginning our rollout this week, and we look forward to offering the vaccine to as many employees as possible, as quickly as possible.
Other questions around vaccines for Chase or I?
Well, Matt, this is Charlie. I just want to thank you for being willing to send a letter to the state about the additional vaccine availability. And hopefully that will result in more doses available to us so we can, so people can go ahead and get vaccinated if they want to much more quickly.
Yeah, and I don't want to speculate on the news, but we know it's an especially fluid situation. And I know there was news today about some of the federal government sending additional supplies straight to pharmacies. And so we'll continue to provide updates around vaccine allocation on a basis as frequently as we meet with the board. And so we'll make sure we have a touch point with you guys continually around that and update you. So you bet, I think that's just something we need to continue to advocate for, especially on the heels of this 100% requirement. And if we could continue at this rate and pace, that would make us feel more comfortable with the situation in front of us, while there's certainly a lot of angst and anxiety around there for staff. And so we want to keep moving forward just as aggressively as we can on that front, certainly.
Matt, something that came up at Health Insurance Committee last night is, sometimes there will be like an extra dose of a vaccine somewhere and somebody can get it. And so people get contacted to come in for that. And the question was, if staff are contacted to get the vaccine some other way, should they? And I think the answer is yes, they should get it however they can.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Exactly. That's perfect answer. So if they have a chance to get it, then they should not wait on our process. They should go ahead and get that vaccine. Yes.
The only, not caveat, but the reminder we would give to staff is that where you get your first vaccine is also where you get your second vaccine. I think there's been some confusion that because it's a 2-dose process. And so JP, I 100% agree. If they get contacted and there's an extra dose and they can go get that, they just need to remember that they go back there. They wouldn't come back to the district for the second dose.
And Chase, this is
And to tell us that they got it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, and then
Yes,
tell,
right.
tell
Like,
HR,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so we'll cover that with employees tomorrow. That's part of, I don't remember if I had told you guys that or not. We'll have a webinar with staff tomorrow afternoon to talk through some of these components again. And so we'll give general reminders through that, and then also some follow-up for those 2 points too, about reminder to go back to your initial place where you received the vaccine. And then also if you are able to take advantage of one of those opportunities, to let us know. So I think the final thing I would just transition us to for this evening would just be around health and safety and any questions that the board is receiving around that. For us, the health and safety team has been meeting here regularly and looking at some of the practices we had through our hybrid model. We're working to see what we can do from an additional PPE deployment for staff, reminders of the PPE that is available, looking at what those recommendations are, looking at our quarantine protocols, and really trying to kind of review all of those, I guess is the best way to say it, and to see what still can be provided and what needs to be changed or adjusted as we have more students and staff in the building on a daily basis. Things like lunch, transitions for specials, all of those components. I would expect us to probably be able to provide you a more robust update next week on those things. Like I said, we didn't get to finish our administrative team meetings this afternoon, and with the internet outage, it kind of disrupted some of the flow of that and some of those decision points that would need to be made. So, but if there are specific questions, we can either try to answer those for you guys tonight about things you're either hearing from the community or have your own questions on, or we can bring answers back to those questions next week.
I don't have a question on the health and safety. You know, I am concerned that, you know, I'm obviously concerned about the gap between the online learners and the in-person learners. And now our in-person learners are going to get twice as much time. And are we going to see that, you know, I guess I'm guessing if there's a gap, maybe the gap is with the online learners. Maybe that's not true. But now the in-person learners are going to get twice as much class time as the kids who are online. And are we going to see those gaps, you know, increase pretty dramatically for the third try?
Sure, I think that's a good question. I'll give an initial answer, and if anybody else from the team would like to jump in on that, they certainly can too, JP. But I think one thing for us as we approach that online instruction through the year, even as we've looked at our online program for next year, we know that there's academic standards and core standards that need to be met for those courses. And so all of those courses started with the intent of covering those standards. And so even though the instruction time is looked at differently, or the amount of time in front of a teacher, you know, through Zoom or through in person, we still have responsibility to teach the core to those students and to get through those appropriate standards. And so I think we are going to constantly check back in. We do check back in with our online teachers as far as pacing guides and some of those components to make sure they are hitting the different benchmarks on those pieces and ready to progress to the next course, you know, maybe as you think about it more on the secondary. And so I feel relatively confident that our teachers have a good handle on that aspect and know that, hey, this is where we need to be when we look at our standards for this trimester or for the end of the year and the point that they need to get to. And so, like I said, I mean, if the team would like to add any answer to that, but I do think that's a concern that, you know, we've heard a couple times is people wondering how they're matching up. Maybe the other thing is I'm thinking through it here as I answer your question would be sometimes those aren't always taught in the same order either. And so I think that causes some concern for folks that maybe the online teacher is in a different part of the course right now. And so it's not matching up ideally with what's happening in our buildings at that current time, but it doesn't mean they're not going to get as far just because they're not directly aligned at that given point in time. So Amy, Greg, Diane, Nick, anything you guys would want to add on that aspect?
Before anybody else jumps in there, I would say that goes to what we talked about last week, right? That as folks are looking to switch between different models, that there can't be a guarantee that they're going to jump right into the exact same spot in the curriculum, right? So I think that's part of this conversation. So sorry to jump on you, Amy.
No, no problem. The only thing I was going to add there is, you know, we continue to measure, monitor, and adjust. I've used those terms before, and I've stolen from Lisa Glenn because I love them. And we will do another data poll around midterm grades here coming up at the end of this week. So we'll be able to see how our on-site students are performing versus our online, and that'll be another good measure, dipstick for us.
So Matt, this is Charlie. JP, did we cover or did they cover your question? Before I start something else?
Yep, I believe so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Matt, this is Charlie. Do we know very much yet about what the increased number of students in the building is going to do to our ability to do distancing within classrooms or the rest of the day and the building? Is there anything that we are able to do in terms of testing now that we were not able to do at the start of the year?
You know, I would say to start with the testing point, Charlie, I think testing capability throughout the community has greatly increased since the beginning of the pandemic. And I think people are more familiar with those. I'm not sure for us that we wouldn't necessarily make any adjustments other than we continue to do our contact tracing and advise people when we think they should get a COVID test if they've been exposed to somebody that was potentially confirmed COVID or a possible COVID case. As far as social distancing goes, I mean, the brutal truth of it is it's going to be severely impacted. The things we're able to do in the hybrid with able to effectively social distance in classrooms and in some of the other spaces is going to be negatively impacted from having additional students on campus. You know, I think sometimes we get feedback that we're not talking about what the potential benefit on the other side of the equation is. And I think we're aware of that, you know, even through JP's question there, and some of the things we're talking about is obviously having students in classrooms for the instruction on a daily basis is going to be a benefit for them. But on the health and safety side, when we look at some of those impacts, the ability to social distance in our classrooms, our hallways, our lunchrooms is going to be different. But that doesn't mean that we've abandoned our health and safety protocols, or we're not looking for effective ways to still try to manage that and keep people as healthy and safe as possible. It's just going to be different. It's not going to be what we were able to do to that extent in the hybrid model.
Okay, is there any resources from the board that you could ask for that might improve, that might help our distancing efforts or not? Since that seems to be a major element in mitigation that everyone urges us to.
I think the biggest thing that we could really use help with is just continuing to advocate for vaccines as quick as possible. I think that's the piece, you know, as far as a resource or a piece where we can work together on, is to get the vaccines to our staff as quick as possible and to get us an appropriate number of doses to prepare for that 100% requirement. So I think that's the best thing and the best angle we can continue to work at this time to make an impact and to make a difference and a benefit for our staff and kids.
And Charlie, just to add a little bit to what Matt's saying, you know, we are still in the process of, as Amy mentioned, filing the Return to Learn guide, which does have some health and safety pieces to it. But you know, one of the enhancements or another addition that we're going to make is we're going to provide N95 masks to all of our staff. You know, reallocate face shields and masks to make them available in the buildings to reinforce some of the protocols that you're talking about. We got interrupted because the power went out this afternoon, but we started having conversations with our building principals about a central office team from facilities, myself, Kate from health and safety, going out and really working with the principals on what you're talking about and trying to look at room configurations and not looking at it as a one size fits all solution, but trying to look at what space is available, not only in each school, but each classroom, and how can we maximize that space to the most extent possible. It's not a perfect solution, but as Matt said, we're still very committed to our health and safety protocols. And so taking the time over the next 2 weeks and trying to maximize every square foot that we have in each building.
Okay, good. Thanks. Do we know yet if we're going to have significant differences of students between buildings?
Amy gave kind of the overall transition numbers there, Charlie. I do think, you know, we started with different numbers, discrepant numbers, you know, between even secondary campus, but especially some of our elementary campuses based on the number of students enrolled in online. And so I would assume there will, continue to be some differences in that. And again, that speaks to why, in a certain building, we may be able to problem solve the situation a little bit differently than we're able to in another.
Okay, Sean, I have some questions about equity and that I would like to ask too, but I'll let others go ahead if they want to.
I have another health and safety question, and I know that it sounds like the health and safety team are reviewing all of the policies, but I'm wondering if somebody can speak to, I also see that we have 183 people on this Zoom, and frankly, that's more people that have attended a school board meeting in a long time. And so I suspect that they're here for information. I'm wondering if somebody can speak to what the current classroom closure policy is, and then what it looks like when a student's classroom is closed. Like how do they learn home, or how is the learning delivered? Just should maybe give parents an idea of what they might have to expect, both at the secondary and the elementary level.
Amy, do you mind walking through that again, kind of what happens in those different
Yeah.
scenarios from a singleton to a classroom quarantine, all those different pieces? Thanks.
Yeah, so that chart I was referring to earlier with the academic protocols, we have it built out for the singleton and quarantine for the class in elementary, and we're building it out now for the secondary, for the building and for the district. Well, the building and the district are similar to what we've already experienced, right? With moving everybody to 100% offsite learning, and the continuous remote schedules are used then. But at the elementary level, with a singleton and quarantine, students have been joining the morning meeting through Zoom. We anticipate continuing to do that. And everything's posted to Seesaw, and that includes the core lessons for reading and math. If a class is quarantined, then we can transition and open that up a little bit wider and utilize similar Zoom opportunities that we would in the online program offering, or when we've been 100% remote, or like we do during the virtual learning days. So if a class is quarantined at the elementary level, we offer the morning meeting, small group reading and math instruction, and specials classes. And then just like everything else, we post to Seesaw, and those core lessons for reading and math are also posted there. At the secondary level, then, when a singleton has been in quarantine, students stay connected to their class using Canvas for their assignments. Teachers use tools like Flipgrid, Padlet, recording of their lessons, swivel technology, Canvas, discussion boards, and posting class notes. Students do not Zoom into class. And then for the class in quarantine, students would, this is going to be, the new element for us, but we're anticipating if the whole class would need to be offsite, that they too then could Zoom with their teacher during the course of the day. Does that help, Lisa?
No, I think that's a great overview. Thanks, Amy. And then can someone speak to the factors that go into the decision between a singleton quarantine versus a whole classroom quarantine?
Yeah, it's primarily related to the contact tracing, but Chase, you want to go ahead with that one?
No, I mean, that's what I was going to say, Lisa, is that it's hard to say definitively, well, this is what happens when it's only one person, and this is what happens when it's a class, because we really defer to the contact tracing process. That's one of the things that the Health and Safety Committee took back up a little bit this afternoon, and I was on a different meeting. And so, Kate, I don't know how much detail you can go into that about the seeding as they looked at that. I hate to put you on the spot since I wasn't there, but I know it is one thing that they were reviewing at this juncture. Kate, do you want to add anything?
What I would add is we once again looked at the Johnson County Public Health recommendations, CDC recommendations as well. And we presented that back to you when changes were made, I believe, in guidance by the CDC. I think it was in December. And the committee met and are committed to continuing the quarantine guidelines that we presented back to you in December, meeting the gold standard for quarantine. I'd have to look at that specifically, but maintaining the standard that we presented to you last time.
And sorry, Lisa, I know it's kind of a broad answer, but again, our nurses are working really diligently in the contact tracing process. And so they work with Johnson County with the guidelines that are in place. And then really we do kind of follow their recommendations. And every situation's unique. That's why we don't use a broad brush, that we have our nurses follow up in every single one of those circumstances. As Kate said, we can recirculate that overall guidance we had, but even against that backdrop, it's really dependent on the information that we discovered through contact tracing.
And that's based on mask wearing, proximity, and duration of time as well. So it is uniquely different to each situation.
So if I paint it with a broad brush, is it fair to say that with twice as many kids there, any quarantine event would potentially be twice as many people?
I think, Sean, that, the general assumption that we could see potentially more quarantines is, I think that's probably a fair assessment. I don't think that our work is necessarily all the way done, and I'm not going to put Kate on the spot as far as where that health and safety conversation left today. We'll bring that back next week. We know that there's also different quarantine protocols and guidance that people have talked to us about or shown us, whether it's the 14 days or the shorter quarantine time period. And so we can bring some more of that information back next week. But I think if you assume that we have more kids in the building and potentially more cases come into the building and more students potentially affected or staff affected, I think that's a fair prediction, that could happen. I know people have wondered about the amount of people that would be in our buildings, and remember some of that initial data from, of course, this data cycle isn't done because parents can still select a choice yet tomorrow. But when we look at originally, we had roughly about 60% of our students in the hybrid option. And so we didn't see a big sea change in that initial intention form and data point we tried to put out from a survey perspective, that we saw it was relatively the same. And so when you're trying to think about how many kids would be in your child's building or what our buildings would look like, that's kind of it's a really rough estimate, but that's a general idea if you're expecting, about how many kids would be there on a daily basis in that way. So I think Dromi had a question here too.
Thank you, Matt. This is to what Amy was discussing earlier on. I think when Lisa had asked the question, you went ahead to talk about the resources that I guess the teachers would use. I think you said Canvas and all the other resources. I just want to confirm that all teachers have the training for all the resources you've mentioned, because I don't want a situation where a teacher will probably say, hey, or ask the student to email the assignments. So I just want to make sure that the teachers have the training with all the resources that you mentioned there. And also, this is not a question or I just want to give a shout out to all the teachers, and we really, really appreciate all the work that you're doing. We know that these couple of weeks coming up is going to be a lot of work for you. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dromi. And yes, our teachers, at the elementary level have had the training in Canvas. Last May, we put them through some exercises in anticipation of potentially using that as our learning management system this fall. And then we did allow some time during that week of professional development that we had ahead of welcoming our students back at the end of August. And Canvas has, been the LMS that the secondary students have used in the recent past. We do hear from time to time that some of our teachers are asking for assignments to be delivered back to different platforms. And so we know that that's something that we could continue to look at and work on. But right now, everybody is trained and should be comfortable using those two learning management systems.
Thank you, Amy.
Are we going to be able to maintain or guarantee fidelity to the classroom sizes in the RAM?
I think that's a good question,
Sorry, I'm
Lisa.
slow to unmute
So
there. Go ahead.
Yep. I think that's a good question, Lisa. Nick and I actually worked on that today, just looking at the numbers that we had so far. We can say, I think with great confidence, that nobody would be over a RAM size 5. We'll have to make some hard decisions whether we allow some of our schools that are sitting, at those lower RAM levels to be slightly over what they've typically been in the past. But we're confident in saying that nobody would be sitting, above what would RAM level 5 would be.
And then I think the answer to this final question of mine is we don't know. But I just want to make it clear for, again, those who are listening. I think a lot of the success that we've been able to have with keeping kids in classroom is due to things like cohorting classrooms for recess or at lunch, and maintaining these small clusters. Are we going to still be able to do that, or is that something that's currently up in the air? We don't know what recess is going to look like. We don't know what the lunchroom is going to look like. We don't know what passing period is going to look like, and there's a chance that we're just not going to maintain fidelity to this keeping cohorts within the classroom.
Yeah, I think the general answer isn't too far away from what you prompted us with, Lisa, but I think that's the goal. Obviously the goal is to do as much of that as possible, but the conversations we're in the middle of is, what's our reality with also the pieces in front of us. And so that's where we're looking at lunchtime and recess and transition for specials, secondary with their lunch and open campus possibilities. And some of those are the conversations that we're engaged with the team right now to see what makes the most sense and what we can do what can we control, what can't we control, and how do we try to stay committed to as many of the practices as possible.
So Matt, I'd go ahead and ask us to talk about equity and disproportionality for a minute. I've had questions raised with me about whether or not we're seeing disproportionality in effects of the virus within our community, students and staff. So I have a couple of questions or suggestions anyway. I don't think we've tried to do an analysis yet of what kind of proportionality or disproportionality may have occurred already among students who have been tested for contracting COVID-19 or have been presumed to have contracted it, and the same thing with staff. And there have been 900 plus students that so far that have contracted the disease that we know about. So to me, that's enough population, to do an analysis. The same thing with staff, the numbers are there. And the second thing, and without knowing if there is disproportionality occurring within our student body, there's not much we can do to try to address it. And the second thing is, some people have suggested that our assignment of staff has may be resulting in placing teachers and staff of color in a somewhat more risky situation than they're comfortable with. And I assume we have enough numbers now to know whether or not that might be occurring. So I wonder if you could address those issues fairly shortly. I'm not tonight necessarily, but in the very near future.
So sure. So the first one I'll take, Charlie, is around your disproportionality in the data of staff and students in COVID specific cases. I think that is something we can work to see what we can do from a data analytics standpoint. I think that's a great question, and we can see what we're able to drill down, maybe what even the state and county has for data about the impact on students and staff of color or just our community population in that regard. The second one, I'm going to maybe give you a more general answer than you like, but I think that all of our staff are in a position that they don't necessarily feel comfortable with this transition to moving to 100%. And I shouldn't make the assumption that it's all, I'm sure we have some staff members that are comfortable with it, or teachers that are comfortable with it, or any employee group. But I would just say, as a general statement, I know this is a major point of anxiety for a lot of staff members, for a lot of teachers, to see this change. And so, I'm always going to be an advocate for equity, and I'm always going to ask the tough questions around how we're doing in those different areas. But I do think in general, for this specific situation, we just have generalized anxiety throughout with a lot of different groups of people about the situation they're going to be asked to be in on February 15th. And I think that speaks to the day to plan and prepare for that. Some of the things that we've talked about throughout the meeting to try to position people there and to be more successful when we do get to the 15th. And I would just encourage people with their specific situations to continue to reach out to our human resource office and work through what possibilities may be there for them. We know that some of those solutions aren't ideal, but I think that's our best channel to try to deal with individuals' concerns and issues as they look at the assignment in front of them.
Well, thanks for the response. I just would say that, I'm still a firm believer that if we have data that is available to us, we should try to utilize that data as much as we can. And I agree with you that, that this is a very difficult situation for staff to be in, and one that I personally very much regret.
You bet. We'll see what we can do on that data. And Charlie, I think that's a good question and probably one we could have looked at sooner. So I'll work with Kristen on the COVID numbers we do have and see if there's something we can do internally with that, or and then, like I said, too, trying to look even on the county or the state level. And I think that's, could possibly be a comparison point for us or a data point in that way. And so we'll see what we can do to bring that back for you.
Okay, thanks very much.
I don't want to drag this on, but I do have a question. I know that Lisa again talked about the singleton, and I think it's based on the premise that if students do contract COVID, then they can study online, right? What if it's a unfortunate event and they're extremely sick? Have we thought about those scenarios and how they're going to make up for the classwork and how that's going to impact, I guess, their grades? Would they be allowed to make up for the work or the time that they've lost?
Go ahead, Amy.
Certainly, Dromi. And, we do have instances, unfortunately, of students falling ill, whether it's been during that pandemic, which, takes them out for several weeks, or, and other areas in previous years and types of sicknesses. So, we have them work with their teachers and make up work as they can. And it just depends on the length of time that they're out and whether we need to regroup and make a different plan for that student. So it's super individualized, but we wouldn't want to penalize them for being sick. So each case is looked at individually.
Yeah.
Amy, you kind of walked through some of the numbers we have for students moving from one platform to the other platform. I'm going to make an assumption that it's kind of scattered around, all of the schools, but maybe it's located in one. As a general question, do you foresee a lot of staff movement because of this change?
Like I shared a little bit ago, Nick and I just took a cursory glance at it today and looked at what we thought or what we knew was going to be our hotspots, and then tried to figure out anything else that might be cropping up. So, at the elementary level, we saw maybe about 10 to 12 teacher changes from first to second try. And I definitely think we're going to see, less impact than that this time, given the numbers that we're seeing, unless we would see a big uptick from today or in tomorrow, when parents still have that enrollment period open.
Yeah, I would just add, I think, Sean, we will see considerably less movement. We had some other variables that played in that first to second trimester with that early retirement COVID caveat that caused some movement, and some other staff that we reallocated to Title I programming. So those things created some additional movement that we wouldn't see this time. So will there be some staff movement? Most likely, but I think there's less variables at play here, so it should reduce the number.
Thanks for that. Going back to what we talked about at the very beginning, having one day off for one of those staff members that has to move around like that is might be a little shy for what they're being asked to do. So I would echo what Dromi said and really offer up my appreciation for everything that our staff is doing and what they will have to do, because I know it's going to be tough.
And I'd just add to that point, Sean, we do have a provision in the negotiated agreement that allows for teachers to have some transition time. So we did that the last time around. Sometimes that does have to occur after hours or over the weekend, but they are getting compensated for that transition if they're switching, making a significant change to their position.
That's great. I appreciate that feedback.
Other questions for us tonight?
I was gonna say we had the extended silence there for a second. So any other questions or comments from directors or anyone on the team? All right. I guess I would go ahead and move on. We do have technically an agenda setting portion on our agenda. And so I would just remind people really that we do have, another meeting next Tuesday, a regular board meeting. And obviously we will not have moved into our 100% in-person model yet. So I think we will have some more information between now and then that will be part of that update next Tuesday night. So any other questions that kind of pop up between now and then, make note of those and we can bring that back next Tuesday. And we also will have a work session to start discussing our FMP 2.0 plans, I think is after our board meeting next week. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right. And all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thanks again, everybody, for your time, and good luck in the next week. And we'll with the cold this weekend, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Thanks, folks. Take care.
Thank you.